afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And with an accent, Momo, very strong.
I've been sticking with that lately.
I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. It's been a minute. I've been with Mace a lot.
Yeah, because I've been back
you're
east,
gone.
and we're going back east again in a couple of weeks. So I had this whole show set up to talk to you about Lakers and NBA and all this stuff, and then we get the news right before the show starts that Travis and Slee was started that Aaron Donald is retiring after 10 years, and it's surprising because of how much money he makes and how good he is. He's retiring at the top of his game. But I actually don't blame him. Yeah. I think that if I was a football player, I've seen so many football players that don't have a good quality of life as they're older. And a lot of them, Marcellus, I've talked to Marcellus about this a bunch. We're going to talk to Kirk Morrison here in about 10 minutes. Ramona, their quality of life, especially guys who play on the interior line, offensive line and defensive linemen. Marcellus told me once point blank, he goes, I'm pretty sure I have CTE.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be a part of my life when I get older. I'm fine now, but I'm not. Our buddy Billy Ray Smith, who Cap did a show with for 20 years, I used to do a show with on the weekends, is starting to show signs of that as he's been away from the game. Great guy. So I don't blame Aaron Donald, and part of me is kind of happy for him.
I mean, I always think it's hard because once you're in that life, like the NBA life, you're in it. Like you're traveling, you're on the team playing, you're city to city.
There's nothing, you can't get there's not a comparable high to it.
I used to say this to my mom when I was, I don't know, sophomore year. I was like, we had my freshman year I played all the time. Sophomore year, we got this big recruiting class, one of which was Jessica Mendoza.
Right,
okay?
Who turned out to be unbelievable.
Olympic star, everything. And I went from starting every game in right field to like the 6 out of 6 outfielders.
Right.
And so the first, I don't know, half the season or so, I was like pinch runner girl. And it wasn't until Mendoza got mono that I had to go, that I played outfield.
Right.
Like they would go, okay, you're outfield and she'll
So your
hit.
circumstances changed drastically.
And it was like, it was so hard being on the team but not playing. And I remember thinking like, at that time I wasn't on scholarship. I was just financial aid or whatever. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm like putting all this time and energy into preparing for this, and I'm part of the team, but I'm not playing, and all I do is like pinch run once a game sometimes.
Right.
And I was like, my mom was like, you don't have to play. You can go just be a regular student. I was like, there's no way that I can't play. Because there's nothing in your life that gives you as big of a high as you get being at this level, being at the highest level. And so I always think about that when an athlete retires, like whether they choose to retire or whether it's forced upon them, right? That you just retire because nobody wants you anymore. There's nothing you can do in your life that will give you as big of a high as you get being a dominant player like Aaron Donald, being on the team, working every day to a common goal. Like, I remember when Kobe retired, he'd spent 2 or 3 years sort of charting that exit ramp, right? And what am I going to do after? And he threw himself full force into being a producer and a creative and writing books. And I remember he told me he went to church the next morning at 7:30 after his last game, and then he worked out because you have that life, everything, the regimen, the camaraderie, the structure, the discipline. Like, it's just so hard to just walk away from that.
And he's going to now, and it leaves the Rams a tremendous hole. But you talk about a guy who, I mean, he deserves to go out any way he wants. There's nobody statistically that really compares to him other than, Travis was talking about this, Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White. Yeah. He was 8-time All-Pro. I mean, he was all 10 years. He was in the Pro Bowl. He was 8-time Pro Bowler, and all 10 years he was All-Pro.
Do you feel like
3-time Defensive Player of the Year?
Did we get to know him, Aaron Donald? Like,
he came in the show. He didn't love doing media, but here's the one thing I'll say about him. I had a relationship with Wade Phillips, who was the
defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and Wade. My second stop in TV was in Beaumont, Texas, and Wade is from a town called Nederland, which is 5 minutes outside of Beaumont. And so I've known him for a long time. Yeah. And I would, he's a football lifer. His dad, Bum, was the coach of the Oilers. And so I asked Wade, I said, you've seen almost every great defensive player, you used to have to scheme against Lawrence Taylor. You've had to scheme against Reggie White.
Yeah.
Where does Aaron Donald rank? And Wade was not prone to hyperbole, and he just said, as good as anybody I've ever seen.
Wow.
He's that good. He's in that class with those guys you're talking about. And Lawrence Taylor is universally considered the greatest defensive player ever to play the game. And for people to say that Aaron Donald is in that conversation tells you everything you need to know.
And the thing about, but I feel like with Lawrence Taylor, he was more of a personality, right? Like he had the earring and he was on TV a little bit more. He had a little. Aaron did a few commercials. I feel like he's more of a private guy, and that's maybe why I don't feel like I got to know him. Now, I didn't cover the Rams the way you guys do.
Yeah.
And but I feel like anybody who makes a decision like that, I admire because it shows me they have balance in their life, that what they're walking away from, they feel like they're walking into something else, and they have enough in their life to keep them happy and healthy and whatever it is, like balanced and motivated. Like he didn't give this up lightly.
That's weird. Like Greg, I think our show is, I'll probably walk away a little too soon. I sense Greg will walk away when it's just right. I mean, you have a very good life balance when Riley is,
when she's comfortable, she's happy, healthy.
Yeah, then you can relax a little bit.
Yep.
Mace is gonna hang on to the rope way too long.
As long as
he'll die on the job
can.
because it's his idea. No, it's he would say his joke is they will have to pry this microphone from my cold dead fingers.
He's gonna be 95.
Yeah, he will. He'll be doing either a show or podcast. And here's Brian Cranston to get him some
my old friend Sue Kalinsky.
Yeah. He will. Mason will die on the job. Aaron Donald
will still be playing.
Aaron Donald is going a little sooner than he needs to, and you're right. That's admirable.
It's admirable because it shows me. Like I had this a couple times in my life, right? When I stopped playing softball, it was a big, it's sort of forced upon you. There's no more place to play. You're done. It's your senior year. You're done. And I wasn't really ready, but I knew it was coming. Like you saw the end,
right?
And you had to like prepare yourself.
And it's a little different for you because it's not like there is a professional softball league that you could escalate to.
Theoretically, I could have gone and played to Europe or something, but like that's not the same as playing in the best college softball conference in the country. Like there's no comp. Plus, I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at the time. By the way,
nobody does.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
Some people, especially at Stanford, they're like, they have the next 17 years and every single day mapped out and whatever. But like even those people, they get off the hamster wheel at some point and realize like, oh, I better figure out my life. And for me, I just kind of like jumped into the Great Wide Open and flailed for a while. And it took
everybody does that too.
Flailed for a while. And I remember my friend saying like, you can't steer a boat if it's not moving. And that was this really good advice that I always give college kids too. Like, you won't know what you're doing. You're going to flail, whatever. But like Aaron Donald, I assume he knows what he's walking away from, and I assume he knows what he's walking into.
And what I love about his story, 3-star recruit coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And then he gets to Pittsburgh, and he's just way better than anybody thought he would be. And then he has this unbelievable NFL career. So good for him. We're going to talk to Kirk Morrison next, who had to play against him. Mm-hmm. Kirk was a defensive player.
Oh, and they found my Postmates.
Oh, yes, Cody Lou is he gets the Indiana Jones Award.
To every building. I was like, did somebody leave a Postmates for Ramona? No. Okay.
All right. So good. Now you're going to get food.
Okay.
Hey, I want to talk about ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, you got to use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter can help you find qualified candidates for all your roles fast. Ian Siegel, the guy who invented ZipRecruiter, puts it this way. They don't leave anything to chance. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/LA. ZipRecruiter uses powerful matching technology to quickly find and send you the most qualified people for your roles. How quick? 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within 1 day. So speed up your hiring process with ZipRecruiter. Go to that website. Try it today for free. ZipRecruiter.com/LA. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/LA. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, Greg, do we have Kirk?
Yes, we
He's
do.
ready.
Okay. Kirk Morrison joining us now. Kirk played in the NFL. Kirk, I'm trying to remember, did you ever play in the same game as Aaron Donald, or did he come after you got out?
No, he came after I got out, but it's kind of our correlation is different is that the year prior I retired, John, and then after that I went into broadcasting. And so my first ever game being a broadcaster was NFL on Fox. Dick Stockton was my play-by-play. I was the color analyst, and it was Aaron Donald's first game as a St. Louis Ram and going up against the Minnesota Vikings at the Edward Jones Dome. And I will tell you this, I went to practice, John, 2 days prior to the game, and I'll always remember I get to practice. I meet with Jeff Fisher. I meet with Les Snead. And as we get done with the meeting, practice was maybe about 2 hours away. And yet there was a guy out there on the field going through pass rush moves, defensive moves. I'm like, Coach, what time is practice? If practice is not until 1. Well, I said, well, who's that guy out there going through a full-on workout? And that was their rookie first-round pick, Aaron Donald out of Pitt. And from that day on, I just kind of knew. I'm not surprised at his career, but you just knew from seeing him that day, 2 hours before practice with Robert Quinn and Chris Long on the team, this young rookie was trying to break the starting roster. He didn't start the first couple games, but, man, look at the career that he had.
Where do you think that drive came from? Like, you know him better than I do, so I don't that has to come from somewhere, whether it's a chip
Kirk,
on your shoulder or
do you
what.
think it has anything to do with the fact that he wasn't I think he was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, right? Mm-hmm. This wasn't a guy that got ID'd when he was 14 years old as a future NFL star, right?
Yeah, that work all came from home, came from Pops, came from his family, came from Pittsburgh, Pitt Tough. That's kind of who they are. And Aaron Donald exemplified that. I mean, just watching him throughout his collegiate career to his NFL career, he's never changed. I would tell you this, the same guy that I just talked about, I saw him in 2014 take the practice field. I'm in Irvine last year for training camp, and practice doesn't start right around, 2, 3 o'clock, John, you would say, Romo?
Sure.
And Aaron Donald's out there 2 hours before practice again.
Yeah, he's Kobe. That's what Kobe used to do.
He was always out there. And so when all of a sudden you see the results that come on Sunday, you're not surprised because he's put in the work, tireless, showed so many guys how to work. And that's the reason why you're never surprised when you see all the accolades that Aaron Donald gets.
We're talking to Kirk Morrison, played in the NFL for a long time. Of course, Kirk's part of our broadcast team and broadcasts both on radio and television, college, pro football, and Kirk's been around the game his whole life. Kirk, you're uniquely qualified to answer this question. Why is Aaron Donald one of the 3 or 4 best players ever? For example, Lawrence Taylor was really fast. Nobody could block him. Reggie White was really strong. You couldn't move him. What made Aaron Donald the great player that he was?
John, it was crazy to think that it was a negative for Aaron Donald, a negative that he was 6'1", and people say he was undersized. But if you think about this, and I would talk about this with DeMarco Farr as well, DeMarco, we would always talk about, it actually was a perfect height for Aaron Donald. You know why it was a perfect height? Because offensive linemen had to come down to him. Yeah. Like usually they were going against guys who 6'4", 6'5", right? And they they're kind of an equal length, but Aaron Donald played with such great leverage as an undersized sort of defensive lineman, but he was stronger than every offensive lineman, every defensive lineman. Then the speed, the agility, his footwork is one in which a lot of defensive linemen mimic now. I mean, watching Aaron Donald on a foot ladder drill is like poetry in motion. He truly was a dancing bear, but he also had the strength of that dancing bear, and he showed that you're not undersized at 6'1". He was actually a prototype that you just won't ever see. You don't see guys that size, that lean, that strength, that agility. He's second to none. I say this. He's the greatest Ram in Ram history. Wow. When you talk about a guy who went 10 for 10, he was in the league 10 years. He made 10 Pro Bowls. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. You tell me another Los Angeles Ram, St. Louis Ram, it doesn't matter. Aaron Donald is the greatest Ram of all time with the record, the resume that he presents. He walks into Canton in 2029, so let's make sure we get our tickets ready for Canton because he's going in first ballot, he and Jason Kelsey.
What's he going to do now? Like, you don't walk away and retire without having an idea. Like, I don't know his off the field life or whatever it is, but what does he walk into?
You know, Momo, remember he had this conversation 2 years ago after the Rams won the Super Bowl, and he was already contemplating retirement. He came out, he said, look, I'm going to come back. They got the new contract, and the Rams had such a poor year in 2022, and he didn't want his career to go out that way. I think to answer your question, Momo, he found so much joy in bringing along the younger players, the 14 draft picks the Rams had last year. And there was a point last year, Ramona, that I saw Aaron Donald. He ran off the field with Kobe Turner, the young defensive standout tackle they drafted. He had his arm around Kobe Turner, and they kind of skipped off the field like they were in elementary school. And I said, and I'm looking at this, and I said, man, you know what? He's found joy in helping out the next generation of players, and that's what he's going to continue to do. I think his work ethic won't stop. He is just now at a point where, honestly, he had already chased greatness. He's already the greatest defensive tackle in the game, maybe, like you said, top 5 defensive player ever in the game, and it's to a point now he walks away on top, which a lot of players don't necessarily have that luxury. Aaron Donald will do that.
Kirk Morrison is our guest. Kirk, last thing for you. How do the Rams move forward from here? In other words, you can't, I mean, he's irreplaceable. You can't get one guy to replace him. You mentioned Kobe Turner, who had 9 sacks last year, but how big of an impact is this on the Rams defense for a team that made the playoffs last year and was moving forward this year with Super Bowl hopes?
Oh, I think you have a lot of faith in Les Snead and Sean McVay. I mean, like I said, last year they drafted 14 players. All 14 of their players made the team, and they were actually impact players. That's unheard of in the NFL.
Yeah.
You don't replace an Aaron Donald. You don't. It may take a year or two. It's going to take multiple guys to give you the production of one Aaron Donald. And you got to have faith in the organization that they will go out and they'll plug players in. They'll look at the waiver wires. They'll see and look at free agency. You can't replace Aaron Donald. It's going to take 2 or 3 years before they finally solidify that position. But look, Aaron Donald gave them the opportunity to do it now in the offseason. Now the Rams may go into it with a first-round pick for the first time since they moved to Los Angeles. Maybe they go out and draft a defensive tackle for the first time in a very long time. That could be something that we see, but it's going to be hard to replace one of the greatest football players ever, regardless of uniform.
Kirk, I know your phone's ringing off the hook. Thank you for talking with us, and have a great day, man. Have a good weekend. We'll see you soon.
You too. Good talking to you, John. Ramona. Have a good one.
All right, there's Kirk Morrison. And coming up, we'll spin the wheel of questions, and we'll continue to talk about Aaron Donald, who surprised everybody. Well, maybe not the Rams. Apparently, he gave the Rams a heads up, but surprised a lot of Ram fans by announcing his retirement today. Momo and for Mason, I'm John Ireland. Mason and Ireland, ESPN LA.
Breaking news today is that Rams legend, champion, and future first ballot Hall of Famer, number 99, Aaron Donald, announced this morning that he will retire after just 10 seasons in the NFL. We're talking about it all day long in your home for Rams football. Breaking news on 710, powered by Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Head into your neighborhood Valvoline Instant Oil Change, home with a 15-minute drive-through oil change.
We're going to welcome our friend JB Long to the program. JB is the voice of the Rams. And JB, I was thinking about you today because I'm guessing part of you is disappointed that you're not going to get to call Aaron Donald games, and part of you is incredibly thankful that you get to do it for the past 10 years. How you feeling?
Yeah, that's so well said. And hello, John and Ramona as well. Thank you for the invitation. Any chance that I get to talk about the greatest athlete that I've ever had the privilege of covering up close and personal is a great one, but especially when it's in the context of your show. And that's exactly right. Like, it hurts so much today, and it's so sad because of how high that mountaintop was.
Yeah.
That he took us to. And I've never known the Rams without Aaron Donald. And it's in addition to the 10 years he gave us, the last 2 in particular, John, are the ones that I've focused on, and I've written kind of a thank you to Aaron in anticipation of this moment that'll be on our site in a little bit. And a lot of that focused on he had every right and opportunity to walk away on top of the sporting universe. But he decided outside the Coliseum that day to agree to run it back. And it did not go well in 2022. It was 5-12. And for the first time in his career, he missed games due to injury, right?
Yeah.
And as painful as that was, I'm so thankful because it helped us brace for this future that was inevitable that we're now about to enter, because we know that winning is possible. We know that inspiration and success is possible. It's going to be harder because of how much he's spoiled us, as all the great ones do. But if he had walked away that day, I would have been thrilled for him, and this would have hurt even more, even though I think it would have been poetic.
JB, why do you think he was able to even think about walking away 2 years ago and then actually do it now? I mean, I've covered so many great athletes, and it's hard for them to give it up. It's hard for them to consider a life without the thing they're great at. But it seems like Aaron Donald was ready for the last couple of years even.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, is the physical toll of football, and especially the way that he approaches his preparation for football. It is a full-time mental, physical, emotional operation and commitment. Is he going to miss it? Sure. And I don't want to speak too much on behalf of him, but what was unique about working with and around Aaron Donald is the standard that he upheld was him against yesterday. I've often said that he was never playing against the offensive guard across from him. He was never playing against the history books. He was playing against himself and Canton. That's it.
Yeah.
And we always knew that he was heading there. And the fact that he was able to finish it with a championship run, and a championship run in which he delivered the clinching play in the NFC Championship game against San Francisco and again in the Super Bowl against Cincinnati. Defensive players in football, they don't get those chances often. It's unprecedented what he did to basically hit the walk-off shot on defense on a football field on the greatest stage.
JB Long, the voice of the Rams, is nice enough to join us now. JB, your kids are little, right?
I have 7 and 4, and I feel where you're going with this, and I'm so glad that you're going there.
Okay, so my question would be, when they're old enough to understand and they say to you, Dad, you got to call Aaron Donald's games, what made him so great? How do you answer that? How do you explain to someone 10 years from now that never got to do what we got to do, which was to watch Aaron dominate games? Why do you think he was able to impact games the way he did?
Well, first, my 7-year-old is the second biggest Aaron Donald fan that I know in our household. But I'm the first. He's also the second biggest Aaron Donald fan among his peers.
Good.
Our close family friends, Milo is the biggest Aaron Donald fan. And I texted my buddy, his father, today, like, how are you going to break this news to him? And he's like, I'm not going to. You have to do it tomorrow when you come over. And so I'm preparing myself for that. But I just wrote this down. I just struggled to put this into words, John, recently, that when my 2 boys play in the backyard, they pretend to be Aaron Donald and tackle each other. And I'm not big into idolizing other human beings, right?
Sure.
Because I know where all of our shortcomings lie. But what I will say to Aaron someday is that I'm glad that he's the one that they pretend to be, because his excellence was not derived from his physical talent. I love the fact that Aaron Donald was not the first pick of the first round of the draft. I love that he fell to 13, but he turned the question marks about him as a football player into exclamation points in his career.
JB, he's the same height as me. He's 6'1", and he did all that stuff you're talking about.
That's right. And his refrain is that hard work pays off. And look, he's got a lot going for him, right? Like, if you don't have the toolkit that he has, you don't even get the chance. But from where he started to where he finished, it's all due to not just his physical preparation, but his mental prowess and the hours that he poured into his craft. To see anyone on the basketball court, on the softball field, in all walks of professional life, to see someone achieve to maximize their ability is one of the things that we love and cherish most as a society. And so, yes, I don't want my sons to emulate or to idolize athletes, but I will carve out this exception for what made Aaron particularly special, and I'm fine with them taking that from his career.
Do you feel like his legend and sort of how good he was will actually grow because his career was relatively short? He could have gone on another 4 or 5 years, I'm sure. And sometimes that's the case, like Gale Sayers, right? I mean, there's
sure,
Barry Sanders. Like a lot of times when you end it short, you're the legend.
Well, we never see JB. We never see him play bad. He never had a bad year. He never, like, everybody deteriorates in sports, but he just didn't.
He could have extended his runway. Like, he could have continued to gravitate towards the edge rush. He could have been like a third down pass rushing specialist and pile up 10, 12 sacks per year for another 2, 3, 5 years. Get those counting stats, right? But I think Aaron knew his unique dominance as much as anyone. And he also has a lot of passions and a lot of loves outside of football that he did not get to focus on. The Rams organization for the last 10 years and for the 8 that I've been a part of, we have run largely on the beaming grin of Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
And we're going to sorely miss that. He didn't just impact his teammates and his coaches. He elevated the entire organization with his professionalism and his character. It was impossible to walk past Aaron Donald in the hallway and get a little nod and a little hello and a smile and not go about the rest of your day with the dog work mentality that he brought to the facility every day. As much as his production will be missed, the one thing that I can't articulate because it's simply impossible is how much the void will be felt in the organization without him upholding the standard that was uniquely Aaron Donald.
JB Long, the voice of the Rams, is our guest. JB, I was thinking about Kobe Turner today, and I thought, okay, Kobe got to play next to Aaron, and hopefully some of Aaron's tricks rubbed off on him. But it's going to be harder for him now, right? He had 9 sacks as a rookie, but I would imagine some of those sacks were a byproduct of the other offensive line double and triple teaming Aaron. He's going to have to adjust, right?
No doubt. I mean, as much money as Aaron made playing the sport, and he deserves every penny, he made a lot of other people a lot of money too, right? Whether it's like a Dante Fowler or Von Miller at the end of his career. Like, he definitely had the Aaron Donald bump on a lot of other really great players. Leonard Floyd is another one that comes to mind. But part of the reason I mentioned those 2 additional years beyond the Super Bowl season, John, is because tough as 22 was, people have told me on numerous occasions that 2023 is their favorite Rams non-championship season. And so there's an institutional knowledge that was passed, I believe, that torch to Kobe and to so many others, like Puka Nacua gets to say he played with Aaron Donald.
Sure.
Right? Like Byron Young gets to say he watched Aaron Donald model the way. And the only memory that I hold more dearly than Aaron holding up his hand and pointing to his ring finger and saying, "Ring me," after beating the Bengals, the only one that even comes close is last year when he and Kobe Turner combined for a safety at SoFi Stadium, and they skipped off the field arm in arm like 7-year-olds. And it was so iconic and so meaningful for me because the joy with which Aaron was still playing, having accomplished everything that this game could possibly challenge him with, and the fact that he was doing it with someone, 10 years his younger, who would eventually try and replicate what he's done for this franchise, that says it all for me. And that was the joy of the overachievement and this rookie class of 2023 is those 14 draft picks got to spend a year with Aaron Donald.
JB, you mentioned some of the other things that he's interested in off the field and things that he might do afterwards. Do you have any sense of what we hear from Aaron Donald? Does and coaching the young players this last year? Do you see him going into coaching? Do you see him taking a break? Do you see him doing something completely different outside of football?
Other than in continuing to invest in diamonds and amazing jewelry and his family, I don't think I would go much beyond that at this moment in time. Like, I think his approach to this says a lot. It speaks volumes with how little he said, right?
Yeah.
He could have done this in so many different ways. It was essentially a Friday morning news dump after like the big wave of the NFL free agency and offseason began. And he just does it in such a subtle, uniquely Aaron way. Aaron was the only person who could stop Aaron, and I believe that will continue in many walks of his life. He's got a unique gift with children. He's an amazing camp counselor. I don't know that he ever needs to coach, but his foundation, what he and Erica and those that they love have done already is impactful, and whether it's here in Los Angeles or Pittsburgh or whatever city and community they choose to pour into the rest of the way, his legacy in Los Angeles is both immediate because of what we just talked about with his teammates, and indefinite. I really believe that. I hope he's around for many, many years and many occasions to come.
JB, this was great. I mean, I've told JB off the air, and I've said it on the air. I'm like the world's biggest JB Long fan. And one thing that I really hope you cherish is that you are the soundtrack of the biggest plays of his career. And you should be really honored by that, because it like when I got to call Kobe's last game, and now I'm getting to call LeBron.
Yeah.
It's like, and JB mentioned his kids are 7 and 4. Like, to kids growing up, JB, you're going to be the voice in their head, and you deserve that. And you articulated perfectly what he meant to the franchise. So thank you very much for doing this today.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And when you won that nice award for your call of LeBron, breaking the scoring record, which you really deserved, I was thinking about this moment and what was to come and how true that is. But today, and no point of the last 8 years or anything about me, it's solely about Aaron Donald being his best when his best was required. And just to be able to go along for that ride was the real privilege, as I know you feel with Kobe and LeBron and so many others you've covered.
Yeah, well said, my friend. All right, have a great weekend. Thank you for doing this. I'll see you again soon.
Great rest of your show and Friday night to come.
Yep.
Thanks,
See
JB.
ya. There's JB Long. And coming up next, we'll touch on the Lakers. We haven't done a lot of Lakers stuff. And